The most important wars are fought on the most unexpected battlefield, the human mind. Simply put, to rule over a people, you only need to control their minds. That's why many believe that the information war is more important than any armed conflict. To this end, the Venezuelan government has been campaigning aggressively to win the information war. I'm the unspecialist, and I think it's time we talk about the Venezuelan propaganda machine.
Divorce is hard, painful, and complicated. After the heartbreak comes paperwork. Washington law firm specializes in helping you through that process. We know how hard endings can be, so we take your legal representation seriously. At Washington Law Firm, we provide serious help for serious legal matters like divorce. To book your free consultation, call 718-877-3100.
Or find us at 455 Utica Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. I want to start with a quote from Joseph Goebbels, one who many may consider to be one of the fathers of modern propaganda. And he said that this is the secret of propaganda, that those who are to be persuaded by it should be completely immersed in the ideas of the propaganda without ever noticing that they are being immersed in it. This very principle is being applied on the Venezuelan populace and all their supporters. The process is simple. A narrative is created and presented as information. That information is then aggressively disseminated through official channels and echoed through unofficial ones. As Goebbels said, the goal of the propagandist is to create immersion, and the people never notice the immersion because they are given a cause. They are unified over common grievances, hopes, and aspirations. And all that stoked up emotion is pointed at a common enemy. Which begs the question, who's doing all the pointing? Which brings me to the first focus of this video, the official sources of this propaganda. In this case, the official sources are the government and news media. At the top, all Venezuelan government officials are sharing the same narrative about their claims to the Essequibo region. The narrative is based on what they describe as historical claims to the region, and all their posts are filled with content that supports that narrative. This includes maps, which show the region as part of their territory, accompanied often by quotes from historical figures about the region, its inclusion, or something nationalistic about the foundation of the country itself. In many cases, you'll see the same 3 or 4 quotes posted over different versions of the same map, and the government officials use their platforms to share this content aggressively. This is Vladimir Padrino Lopez. He's a general currently serving as Minister of Defense for the National Armed Forces of Venezuela. He's very active on Twitter with almost 1 million followers. Daily, he posts about the controversy, and just like I said, his posts have maps that include the Essequibo region, and are often accompanied by historical quotes which are loosely connected to the history of the area and the controversy. These quotes are used specifically to stir up nationalism. Periodically, he spares no effort in pointing out who he believes to be the historical enemy in this case. For example, in this post, which when translated reads, "That flawed Paris Arbitration Award of 1899 that tried to take the Essequibo from us was nothing more than a fraud under the blackmail and threats of the British Empire. 124 years after that attempted dispossession, we ratify that the son of Venezuela is born in the Essequibo. We will defend what's ours." His posts, along with many others, paint the British Empire as this great enemy who stole their land. Now, of course, no one today was alive to see any of this transpire. So the historical aspect and the accompanying quotes are only to trigger something called anemoia, which is a term for nostalgia for a time and place that one has never known. The nostalgia is important in this equation because it serves as an opiate for the masses. It's a message that harkens to more prosperous and abundant times, the pride of a nation. But in other words, a distraction from the worries of the present time, difficulties of today, and perhaps, in this case, the shortcomings of the very government that is pushing this propaganda. Regardless, the British Empire is no longer a real threat. So, instead, The narrative points to the United States and ExxonMobil as the modern imperialists who threaten their country. This is Delcy Rodriguez, Executive Vice President of Venezuela. She's also very active on Twitter with 846,000 followers. She posts daily about the controversy, most notably making the unbelievable assertion that a microstate like Guyana has been the aggressor throughout this controversy. Even more unbelievably, attributing aggression to the outfits worn by Guyana's President Ali. However, in this case, I want to point out her posts where she singles out the United States and ExxonMobil as the enemy. For example, in this one, which when translated reads, Venezuela has always defeated you and will continue to do so. You are a shameful stain in our region. You have been a participant in coup d'etat, economic wars, and fecund corruption, godfather of regional extremism and perverse mind of lawfare. Venezuela will hold its referendum to defend its rights over the Essequibo territory in accordance with our constitution and international legality. Nothing will stop Venezuela, and your plans of aggression against Venezuela directed from ExxonMobil will be defeated. Venezuela will always win. Most Venezuelans today remember and have experienced many of their issues with the United States and multinationals, so it's easy to incite hatred for these two enemies who in some way or another are involved in the current situation. And that's why their government officials take extreme care to always use negative language when referring to the USA or ExxonMobil. Take this post, for example, from Venezuelan General-in-Chief Domingo Hernandez Larez, which when translated reads, one more imperial lackey incapable of thinking or articulating for himself, a faithful follower of the scripts and primer of the North American ABC of lies and misery, which will only generate an escalation of violence and chaos. He will be responsible for the consequences generated by the provocations of placing a third party in a territory that does not belong to him. The Venezuelan people will never allow themselves to give up even a millimeter of their national territory. This post was made in response to an official announcement by the Guyana government of new oil discoveries off the shores of the Essequibo region. Their government also ensures to reject every statement made by the Guyana government and any other statement made in support of Guyana by other nations, agencies, and organizations. Part of that rejection is the deliberate misrepresentation of these statements and placing them in the context of their narrative. This is in part made possible by the fact that these statements have to be translated from English to Spanish and vice versa. For example, here's a post from Ivan Gil, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Venezuela, responding to an official statement by CARICOM in support of Guyana and calling for the maintenance of the Caribbean as a region of peace. His statement, when translated, reads, Venezuela rejects the statement from the Secretariat of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, which manipulates the reality of the arguments presented by the Venezuelan state in fair and necessary defense of its security and territorial integrity. The news media then serves to reinforce the government statements using their platform to support the narrative. And due to the authoritative nature of the government platform, as well as the authority and respect that the general public often gives to news media, this narrative is then accepted as fact. Which brings me to the ultimate catalyst of Venezuelan state propaganda, the unofficial sources. Unofficial sources in this case refer to sources which are not connected to or recognized by the government or formal media houses. By their very nature, unofficial sources are not restricted or shackled by the same diplomatic limitations or obligations of their official counterparts. As a result, these unofficial sources are the perfect machine for pushing propaganda. You can find examples of this worldwide, pages that only serve to push an agenda, often related to race, politics, or other issues connected to various ideologies. In many cases, these pages are secretly supported by official sources, governments, and backed by interest groups or backers that benefit from whichever agenda it is that is being pushed. There are several Venezuelan pages like this on virtually every social media platform, with hundreds of thousands of followers between them. If you're a Guyanese online that's been following this issue, there's a pretty strong chance that you've come across at least one of them. To show the efficiency and commitment to the narrative by these Venezuelan pages, here's a post of President Ali's statements from a live that he recorded on the same day as I'm recording this video. And less than 3 hours after the live was up, the pages clipped it, translated it, and of course contextualized the translation in such a manner that the statements will appear that the president is cultivating a sentiment of war and aggression, which is obviously not true if you actually look at the live in English or pay attention to any of the president's statements made at any forum at any point in time throughout the course of this controversy. These pages repost and support their government propaganda, deride pro-Guyana content, and even, in some extreme cases, promote rhetoric that can only be described as racist and hateful. In other words, these pages don't have to put on the same diplomatic gloves as their official counterparts. And with the gloves off, these pages and their followers take every opportunity to play dirty. Have you come across Venezuelan propaganda on social media? How does the Guyanese propaganda effort compare? Would you like to see more information and education from official sources in Guyana? Has the information presented by these official sources been given in a way that's easily digestible for the public? What would you like to see improved? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be sure to share the video to keep this conversation going. And as always, thanks for your support. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video, which discusses why the current migrant situation has become much more of a political issue than it is a humanitarian one. Don't be afraid to share ideas for future topics or clips, videos, or anything interesting that may be useful to talk about. Thanks for watching.